Are we ready to go? Because I just want to eat this crisp.
Hey guys, and welcome to this week's Comic Comments. We're doing a Fantastic Four film review on From the Vault this week, as we have just been to see it. I'm Matt, and I'm joined by my lovely guest here, Hannah. You're much better looking than Pete. It's a joy to have you on.
Pete's still hot.
Yeah, I've made a list of like 14 points that I want to talk about. If I just run down, then you can discuss with me.
Yeah.
And then if there's anything I missed at the end, you can just be like, beep.
All my points are in my head because I'm smarter than Matt.
Hey, I kept these in my head, and the moment the credits rolled, I was like, write them down. Counted them on my fingers throughout the film. The first thing that came to mind, right, is the only little movie blip I noticed. She takes an earphone out to Sue.
Oh, I noticed this.
To talk to him, and then she goes to put it back in, and he carries on talking, so she's like, oh. And then at one point, she's just sat with both their headphones in, chatting away to him, and I was like, well, you didn't hear him before.
Yeah.
So that was a little glitch on their part.
It was like, it was out, and then the camera angle changed, and it was in, and you're like, come on, Sue. Sort yourself out.
That was the only thing that I noticed. Anyway, the first thing on my list is the humour in the film. There were a couple of moments where we both had a nice little giggle.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've already ruined that headphone gem for you, but there will be spoilers.
You will notice it now.
Yeah, there's spoilers in territory now. But the humour's like, there's not a lot. It's not like the Avengers films where there's actually, they pack in as much as they can. This is very, like, subtle humour. I would say
they've not tried to like make it a comedy. It's not a comedy, but it's like
I think my favourite subtle one is when Victor's talking about Reed's transporter, and he's like, oh, I can't believe you're using something that came second to a volcano in a science fair, and Reed's like, actually the potato clock came second, we got disqualified. I thought that was good, but my favourite, like, proper in-your-face one is just when we see Johnny and Victor, and Ben meets them, and he's like, I'm Johnny, and this is Borat. Borat's a dick. And I thought that was good.
Von Doom's actually from
Latveria. Yeah.
That place.
I guess that leads nicely into talking about Victor's character, actually. Well done with that segue.
Yes.
Like, obviously, I'm really into my comic. This will be interesting because we can get your view of not knowing the comics and my view of knowing the comics.
Yeah.
Victor's character, like, he is called Victor Von Doom. They changed that because he was called something really fucking random before. This is very much based on Ultimate Comics, and he's Victor Von Doom. There are some aspects of his character which I really like, because I've talked to you about how he's a very up himself kind of person, but like he listens to classical music and he's got that kind of side to him. The way he speaks, he's very like well pronunciated and everything. There's a scene where when we first meet him, he's looking a bit grubby and he's sat like playing video games and
he's like locked himself away and basically hidden himself.
Yeah, but I said, to me, Doom's not that kind of guy. He's very well kept and he cares a lot about his appearance and he wouldn't allow himself.
He's a bit of a perfectionist.
Yeah, and he's quite vain, really. But it's like, I did like a lot of his character. But this is just us talking about Victor. We'll talk about Doom, the character, separately. Yeah. But I thought he was just the whole way that he acted. Like, the guy who played Doom before, his relationship with Sue was very, like, annoying in the old... Because in this, just his facial expressions, the way he looked at Sue, and you could see, like, a pained rage, and I thought it was good.
You could tell that, like, he was attracted to Sue, and
but he didn't even have to say it.
No,
which was good.
You could just tell from the way he was acting around her.
I love his and Reed's like little rivalry that they've got going on. That's Victor as a character, so I like it. There are certain aspects of his personality where I'm like, I don't think Victor would do that, but overall, especially like when I saw who was playing him and I saw him in interviews, and I was like, you're not Doom.
Well, I think it was like you liked him before you kind of hated him type of thing. You know, you thought he was a bit funny and like he worked well with the other characters, and then
yeah, because he looked like he was part of the team sort of thing. Yeah, like they explained Sue and Johnny as Sue's adopted. This isn't at all in the comics, and you said like it would have worked if they had just been siblings, and
if it was if they were just like had mixed race parents,
like
because that can happen. You can get a white child and a black child with mixed race parents.
Sue's character, I said anyone could have played Sue. She's a really nothing. The most distinguishable thing about Sue is she has to listen to music to think. That's literally the only special thing about her.
Yeah, she's just made out to be like a smart girl.
I think the other thing is like the actress whose name escapes me who plays her, she is really pretty, but the point is, it's like Sue's supposed to be knockout hot, but she's also really smart. So people look at her like, oh, she's nice to look at, and she's like, well, yeah, I have brains too. Whereas she was just, quite...
Well, I think the fact that there's no other women in there, you kind of like, well,
oh shit, yeah,
she is hot because she's the only one there.
Woman. And like, I liked Johnny's attitude because I like it's the Johnny Storm that we know who's like cocky and cracks jokes and everything, but it's implied that like when his dad says you have a really high IQ, and it's the fact that Johnny is really clever, but he chooses to just not use it, and he does like street racing and stuff.
Yeah, but he did say himself, like he built the car that he was racing from scratch.
Like he's got Johnny's stubbornness and stuff. We don't see so much of like the playboy side. Like, that's a big thing in the comics as well. Johnny Storm's always with girls.
Yeah.
But I suppose it links in with the storyline because they're locked away for, like, forever.
Yeah. It could be, like, we said about the film that it could have worked as a series because it was more of a origin story type thing. But you kind of think, like, how are their characters going to develop if there's going to be another film? So... it could be, you know, they've become this Fantastic Four superheroes.
But they've got...
and then Johnny becomes a bit of a playboy then because he's famous and stuff.
Yeah. And another point I had, like, there's a point... I personally didn't like it because I thought it was really... to me, it just didn't feel like the characters, but Victor, Johnny, and Reed, basically... Reed's like, ethanol kills brain cells, so they're sat around drinking, and they get drunk, and they're like, hey, we should take... Reed's interdimensional transporter because they're pissed. And
but first they were pissed off.
Yeah.
Because basically it was like taken from them that their opportunity to...
I mean, one thing, I just felt like... I just don't imagine Reed or Victor being... Like, I can imagine Victor would be like, oh, I'll have a fine wine because I'm that sort of guy. Yeah. But I can't imagine Reed or Victor being like, yeah, let's just get pissed. Whereas Johnny, that suits.
But Victor wasn't that kind of person. In the old films, he was. Yeah. He was that guy you could imagine would be like, oh, let's have a really expensive wine.
I think as well, like, I just don't like the fact that it was under the influence of alcohol that was the catalyst for them getting in the transporter anyway.
Well, it wasn't. It was like they were angry.
This is very much based on Ultimate Fantastic Four, and in Ultimate Fantastic Four, they're all a lot younger. Ben Grimm and Reed are friends when they're kids, and Reed builds this interdimensional teleporter, and Ben Grimm's like his bodyguard. He fights off the bullies and stuff, and you see in the film that Ben Grimm is that tough, like, takes nobody's shit kid. And then, like, even in the comics, he shows off his teleporter. They get picked up and sent to this specialist brainchild school at the Baxter Building, and then it is the interdimensional travel that gives them their powers. Like, I'm not too familiar with Ultimate Comics. I had to look all this up, but I was like, fair enough. It's pretty spot on.
I think they just wanted to go a completely different way from what they'd been with the last film.
Because I said to you, didn't I, about with The Amazing Spider-Man, it was like, oh, he's still going to fight a robber and Uncle Ben's going to be shot, but this time it's over chocolate milk and not money. It's like, it was the same film. They were just like...
There were slight changes.
Yeah, whereas in this, you're not like, oh, this is like the old Fantastic Four.
You're not constantly comparing the two.
But yeah, it's like, Ben's character, he's really likeable, even though he doesn't do an awful lot.
Yeah, he's not in it a lot, but because you see him like from the beginning, but as a kid. And then you see him a little bit, and then it's like, Reed's gone off, done this thing, met these people, and then he's like, you know what, my old buddy Ben, let's bring him back in. Yeah,
because he basically rings Ben, and he's like, Neil Armstrong went to the moon, and so are we. He's like, are you drunk? And he's like, yeah, so come. But it's weird, because
he's like, we started it together, let's carry it on together. And that's a good friendship to have.
We'll talk about Reed a bit later on, with the kind of guy that he is. But basically, we get... like, they get their powers, and then we get a bit of a time jump, because I think you see them as kids, then it says 7 years later, then we see them working and stuff, they get their powers, and then there's another year, so we're in 2015 now. Yeah, that's right, because it starts in 2007, when they're kids, then goes to 2014, then 2015. But, like, this film is really dark, in that, like, we have the time jump, and we see that, like, the thing's been working for the army. Because when we see them first develop their powers, like, Reed's all stretched out, and he's, like, close to tears, asking where his friends are, and Ben's, like, not fully formed yet, and is, like, in a lot of pain and really upset, and Johnny's constantly on fire, and Sue's flickering in and out, and they play it up as like these are disabilities more than powers, and it's really quite dark and upsetting. And Reed manages to like wriggle out and escape, and Ben's basically crying out for help, and Reed leaves, and that's a big like that, because at that point when he left, and then they're like, yeah, he's not coming back, he ran away, I was like, that's not Reed Richards at all. But then obviously,
but he was like working on his own, trying to help, and that, I think, developed Ben's character, like, to go off and, like, because they kind of basically bullied him into it, like, to go off and fight for the army and stuff. They were like, well, Reed's buggered off, so
well, they basically say,
do something for us and we'll help you out.
Yes, because the army's basically like, yeah, we'll help you find a cure, but you can go off and run missions and stuff. And the army, like, our heroes want to recreate this teleporter to go onto the planet and find a cure, whereas the army's like, we could send soldiers over there and get them superpowers, and, you know, we can control the world and all the rest of it. But we see, like, Reed's journey in this year when our characters have been developing their powers. Like, Sue's powers are awesome in this, like, the fact that she uses her force fields for flight, and, like, we see how badass Sue is. I didn't like at all the fact that it's like they have special suits in there, but it's not like, the idea was, oh, Johnny's suit is fireproof and Sue's can be invisible with her. In this one, it's like Sue needs her suit on, otherwise she can't control her invisibility. And Johnny's like, when he's on fire, he like turns a nozzle on his suit and he goes back to normal. And my thing with that is, the whole point is they have control over their powers, they can switch them on and off, and Ben can't, and that's why you feel so sorry for Ben. Whereas in this, like, you see that Mr. Fantastic, like, stretches out, that's almost like his normal state, and you see how much pain he's in when he has to drag his limbs in, and he actually makes a suit that has, like, coils and stuff on.
He makes, like, the suit that the army have made for Johnny and Sue.
Yeah, but he makes his own.
But he's made it, like, out of scrap metal and stuff, like he would have done in his
But on his
garage.
journey, I loved the fact that he's he's on the run, and he's using, like, fake email addresses and stuff to collect scrap metal, and he actually stretches his face and goes into this shop and he buys scrap metal, and he's like, oh yeah, if I'll give you $5 for this and I'll fix your cash register, and because he's Reed, he literally does like one thing and fixes it. But
he doesn't look like Reed. So at first I was a bit confused. I was like,
yeah, I was confused, but I thought it was
guy?
cool.
I was like, is this meant to look like a dirty Reed? Like,
yeah.
But then you obviously, you see it.
I like the fact that you see that Reed's explanation for running away is he's like, the army doesn't give a shit about you. He's like, look what they're doing to Ben. He's just their puppet, and Johnny's like, yeah, I'm ready to go into the field, and he's like, they're going to do the same thing to Johnny, and he's gone off on his own to, out of scrap metal, build the teleporter, and he just wants to fix his friends. But Sue ends up tracking him down, and they bring him back in to finish this teleporter because they can't do it without Reed. Because it's like Victor was the one who came up with the teleporter and all the rest of it, and he started this big project, and then Reed's the one that
got it to work.
So I like that as well, that there's this whole like scientific minds clashing against each other sort of thing as well.
From the beginning, like Victor was like, oh, so some kids like done this and stolen my design, thinking he's like the smart one, and it is you can see he's kind of the whole time like Reed thinks he's like better than me, but really I'm the best.
I thought Miles Teller as Reed at first I really like. It's because to me Reed Richards is a lot older, but it's ultimate Reed Richards, so he is younger. But I like the fact that he doesn't like crack wise. He just said stuff and people laugh, but he's like, what's so funny?
He doesn't realise he's being funny.
And like it is little things like his awkward geekiness around Sue, and when Johnny goes for the fist pump and he's just like taps his hand. Like Reed in the old films and in like comic books and stuff, it's his intellect that is Reed's superpower. The fact that he can, like, the most he'll use his stretching powers for is he'll be, like, building a machine and he'll go, I need to reach that, and stretches. But in this film, we see, like, the potential.
Yeah.
Like, we see him fighting with it more, and I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Miles Teller was, I would say, was an alright Reed Richards. Like I said, the girl that plays Sue was bland. Ben Grimm was like, when I saw it was Jamie Bell playing Ben Grimm, I was kind of like, I don't see it working.
But I thought it worked well.
I liked what they did with his voice as well. Like, it was Jamie Bell's voice, but they added a slight tone of gruffness.
Yeah.
But, like, it wasn't like in the old Fantastic Four films where his voice was, like, it was just him putting on a voice. Because another thing, right, with the Thing was when they put the Thing in the bodysuit in the old films, he was still like this stocky, like shorter than everybody else guy, and everyone hated it. And then as soon as they were like, okay, here's CG Thing, everyone on the internet was like, we hate it, and they were like,
you can't win.
You can't win. I loved CG Thing, especially because what made me laugh was Jamie Bell is, Ben Grimm's the muscle, and he's fucking tiny.
Yeah,
he's like a head shorter than Miles Teller. When he becomes Thing, he is massive, and the way he was designed and everything, I thought it was great. Because you could, even in his face, in like the way his eyes were, you could kind of tell like this is Jamie Bell.
Yeah, I always liked the old Thing, like in the suit. I thought that, like, I had no problems with him being shorter than everyone still, whatever. I was like that, and then I was like, I don't know whether I like a CGI one, because sometimes you can either have really good CGI or really shit ones.
Like the Hobbit CGI.
Yeah, whatever. But I really enjoyed it. I really liked it, and there was an emotion in his eyes, which is good, because then you do feel for him more, like, because you realise, oh, he's still a person. He's not just a thing. Yeah,
I mean, Ben and Reed's, because obviously Reed's ran off, and when he comes back, he's like, Ben, I'll fix this, I'll fix everything, and then Ben's like, I gave up believing in your bullshit a long time ago, and we're not friends. Like, it is, you kind of see how they come together, because Ben's attitude kind of becomes like, okay, look, we need to be a team, what's happening? but I personally didn't get enough clarity that showed, like, that they were friends again. It just felt like a bit of a, not a plot hole, but just a thread that I could kind of pull out, where it's like, well, you know,
you just wanted a bit more explanation behind it.
Well, yeah, to
really.
go from you've ruined my life, you're full of shit, and you're like, I want nothing to do with you, to like, yeah, we're fine.
Like, yeah, it wasn't like that. It was like, because they were fighting at the end with Doom, and he was like, Reed was like, yeah, okay, well, we've got to think of something. We've got to work together. Like, they were all trying to do their individual things. And then there was like, we've got to work together because we can only defeat him together.
The moment for me as well, like when Ben's at the very start, where he's just become thing, he's saying, Reed, help me, please help me, and Reed's like, I'm sorry, and he leaves. Whereas Doom's like kind of getting rocks to crush the thing, and when Thing says, Reed, please help me, Reed does help him and saves him. And then when Reed's like, we need to work together, Thing kind of stands up and is like, okay, what's the plan? For me, that was maybe what they were trying to go for, was they like
learned to trust him again.
Yeah. This really, like, people are hating on this film, by the way. This film's got like 10 out of 100 and 60 reviews said it was shit. People said it's the worst superhero movie of all time. They hate it more than Batman and Robin and stuff. But I'm like, I disagree with that. I did enjoy the film, but this is kind of where it falls apart. It feels like the first 2/3 are really good, and the last bit is where it falls apart. And this is, like you were saying, it would work as a television series because this goes into so much detail about their origins. Like, we see them as people and we care about them as people before they even get powers. I really like, but I wasn't sat like, it's not one of those films where you're like, I just want to see Human Torch be on fire and punch people. You're really into the origin side of it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's really good as an origin story. If you're going in thinking, I want Avengers, I want punching all the time, then you're not going to like it.
That's my problem, though, is it's called Fantastic Four, and they're not the Fantastic Four in the whole film. And even the big payoff is not a big payoff. It's because, right, this thing, they fight Doom, and Doom's character is fucking stupid because, like, the idea is we see Victor, they go to this other dimension, and Victor just, like, the energy on the planet that gives them their powers, it just, like, swallows him up, he falls into it, he's presumed dead. When they go back, because they're, you know, trying to find that cure, they find Victor, and they find, like, his suit's merged with his body, and he's been feeding off and living off the energy
for the year that he's been missing.
And, like, so for some reason that means he's metal, because...
No, it's not his metal. He said himself, the new world, kept him alive with its power, and now he's the power source. He is a power source.
I suppose so, but like...
He's not metal.
Yeah, but he's got, like, a full metal mask on.
Because that's what he had. His suit, the suit that
was glass. It was a glass visor.
Yeah, which is why he has, like, a clearness over his face.
Oh, I suppose.
And then it had a black breathing apparatus where they could speak into and hear each other.
Anyway, right, his design was fucking stupid. His hood was massive. Like, I just didn't like the way he was designed. I also didn't like the fact that Doom's powers are, he has, like, parts of his body, he's mainly, like, metallic, because he makes the Doom mask because his face is, like, deformed and disfigured, and because he's a very vain kind of guy, he covers that up. And he's, like, he has control over electricity, he has his super intellect. That's, like, Doom. And then we have Doom from the Ultimate Universe, who can do all that, but he also has, like, a power over magic as well. At one point he swaps minds with Reed Richards and he can resurrect people. Like, he has all that kind of magic stuff. nowhere that I have seen or read says that he can blow people's heads up with his mind. Doom literally wakes up and is just walking, like, he's just like, oh, door, the door just blows up.
But if you have a power over someone's mind, you can do that. You can make it, like, do stuff to blow it up.
But I just think it's stupid that he just goes around and he just fucking, like...
But it's like, we said this earlier when we came out. We said, there's 4 of them, 4 Fantastic Fours. No,
that's 16
just 4.
people.
Yeah.
But no, like, I get it. It needs to be a big enough threat to take on 4 people. But even if you had him being the mystic guy, it's like I said, oh, I'm just going to swap my mind with the things. Right, now I'm going to beat the shit out of you as the thing. Like, there's so many things they could have done.
They kind of just, like, filled the last part of the film with him being the threat, and they didn't want to move that to the second film.
Because that's the thing, is that Doom was in it for fuck all time, and the big last battle, I think, 4 punches are thrown? Like, it
wasn't a big battle.
Yeah, it feels like they were telling this awesome story, and then they went, shit, people came here to see, like...
a superhero film.
And then they quickly crammed in a really, like... battle. Yeah. I felt like it would have been better if you'd had all this build-up, Doom reveals himself, and then it was, like, stops, and then it was, like, the second film, like... Yeah. This is why we said it works as a TV series. If you had the first, like, episodes and stuff, having this big sprawling origin story.
Yeah, having like an episode for each one of them. And then...
Yeah, you could have done... I would have loved it, especially how dark and gritty it is, you know. It would have been good. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of the...
No, they kind of rushed it, and they could have just... Yeah, they could have just, like, stopped it at, like, a bit of a cliffhanger and then been like, now we're going to have a big battle in this next one, and they're, like, the Fantastic Four are going to work together, and they're going to develop their skills and stuff, and then it's, like, a bit of character development.
Towards the end, like, the end after the battle and everything, I quite liked. Another thing that's worth noting is that we got some of the classic catchphrases in there, like Johnny's doing a test and he's like, okay, yeah, flame on. And then you noticed...
At the beginning, Ben called his brother an idiot, and his brother, like, came in to beat him up, basically, and he was like, it's clobbering time. And then, obviously, Ben said it later.
Because it's quite a gruff thing... Usually, like, it's clobbering time sounds like a gruff thing, but in Jamie Bell's voice, it just didn't... It was more, like, laid back. Like, we see Doctor Doom on his file. It says he's from Latveria, but it's not really, like, mentioned.
Other than the occasional, like...
they're, like...
comments that he's, like, foreign.
Oh, yeah, because he's like, hey, Adolf, and he's like... I told you I'm not Jewish. But this was the other thing. I expected a little bit of a twinge of an accent, but he doesn't have any. So when they're, like, making these jokes about him being foreign, I'm like...
But like you said, if he's well pronounced, like, if a foreign person can learn English...
As well, just say Franklin Richards loved him as a character, because they were saying, like, in the comic books, Franklin Richards is more of the leader figure. Whereas, like, Reed, because it's like Reed is the leader of the Fantastic Four, that's established straight away. In this, he wasn't. In the Ultimate Comics, I'm pretty sure Sue and Ben get together. Sue and Ben get together, and then Reed, after his proposal to Sue is rejected, he goes crazy and turns into the Maker, who's a bad guy, and Sue dies, and the Ultimate Universe is fucking stupid. Ben's not dumb. He's not like a stooge. He's not there like, oh yeah, I'll press the buttons. Like, he's smart enough to turn around and go, I haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about. Like, you know, I like the way that they've done his
like,
character.
from the beginning, he was smart enough to know that, like, maybe Reed's, like, idea that all the other kids are laughing at is worth something.
Yeah.
And so he just,
it's at the end when they're all talking, and like we see at one point on a file somewhere it says Ben Grimm, codename The Thing, but it's like blink and you'll miss it. But at the end they're trying to decide on a team name, and then Johnny's like, how about the Human Torch and the Torchettes? And then he's like, oh, we could call ourselves The Thing That Nobody Wanted and Friends. So we know there's The Thing, we know there's the Human Torch. There's no inkling or mention of Mr. Fantastic or Invisible Woman, but in the Ultimate Comics, they weren't called the Fantastic Four, and they didn't have code names for ages. It was like Spider-Man who named them or something. Ben's talking about how he's come to have peace with himself and how far they've got, and he's like, oh, it's fantastic. And then Reed's like, wait, say that again. And then he's like, yeah, it's fantastic. And then Reed's like, I've got our team name, how about? And then the film ends.
Yeah, so it comes up with the title. And
so it's basically a rip-off of every film ever. Like, Pitch Perfect, like, pick the song, how about? Or in the Avengers film where he says, Avengers! And then, I'm fucking sick of that. People need to start finishing their sentences. Also, I had a nice bitch about the fact that Victor's, like, I love when Victor's saying, because they're like, we could use interdimensional travel and learn more about our Earth and we can fix it. And then Victor's like, well, why? He's like, the people who are put in charge of this Earth are the same people that have driven it into the ground. I say we just let it burn. And then Sue's like, hey, Dr. Doom over here. And I was like,
she didn't say it like that.
Fuck off. I hate it. Because I just don't like when they do that in films. Because what was the example I gave you? Oh, it would be like if Peter Parker was like, met Mary Jane's there walking along, and she's like, oh, a spider, how scary. And Peter Parker's like, don't worry, MJ. Picks up the spider, and she's like, oh, we've got a real Spider-Man over here. The Human Torch is like
good voices.
Lights a cigarette, and they're like, oh, talk about the Human Torch. Like, it's fucking, I don't need that. I need people to be cleverly named. Do you know what was better? Chris Evans' name in the Fantastic Four, where people are like, and what do you call this thing? And he's like, exactly, the Thing. Like, even that was better. Well, another thing that's interesting though about Reed in the Ultimate Universe is, as far as his powers go, they find out that he can actually stretch his brain to make it bigger so that he can figure out problems. Which was weird.
Very, very good.
But there's a lot of stuff about the Ultimate Universe that I read. But who cares? The Ultimate Universe is dead now.
Bum, bum, bum.
It lasted 15 years. And it died in Secret Wars. As a film, if we forget it's got the Marvel label on it, forget it's like a superhero film, it would score pretty high, in my opinion, because I was really gripped. I loved the origin. I loved how dark it was.
Yeah.
I can't see any of these actors or any of this existing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I want Fox to be like, here, Marvel, here's X-Men, here's Fantastic Four, here's all your characters and creations, now just run with it and have fun with it, which is why loads of people are just boycotting this film. They're like, I don't fucking give a shit how good it is, I don't want Fox to own it anymore. I don't want Fox to own it anymore either.
I would rate it lowly for a superhero film. Like, for an action-packed superhero film, if that's what you're going to see, you're probably not going to like this. But if you like the story, as an origin film, it is up there. Like, it is a good one. So
yeah,
I'd probably give it 6 or 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't want to be too generous with it. It's like 6, maybe a generous 7. But it's, because I said to you, what it comes down to is like when they started writing Ultimate Spider-Man, there were the first, like, quite few issues, he wasn't even Spider-Man. It was backstory and stuff, but it sold really well, and it just goes to show, like, if you have a really solid, good story, you don't need people going around punching each other and having superpowers, because people like the story, and I think this is a great example of that. It was just a bit of a letdown towards the end.
Yeah, towards the end they tried to, like, go like, oh, they're meant to be superheroes, let's do the superhero bit. I think over August you should join me for more episodes of stuff. Yeah.
Simply because
I think I should join Pete, because that would be a good looking duo.
What, 2 gingers together?
Ew, clearly not Ginger Love.
Yeah, because you dyed your hair.
I'm actually going to read a comic book.
Yeah, Suicide Squad, which we reviewed, which me and Pete adore. It is like my favourite comic that I have read ever.
And they both recommended it to me. If you watched the live one, you would have seen that.
So, Hannah's going to read that. I've actually bought volume 2 of that as well to read, and volumes 3 and 4 are for sale in Waterstones for £10 each. But yeah, expect to see more of Hannah. Anyway, Hannah doesn't like it when I say bye.
I don't like it how he ends the show.
How would you like to end it?
With a song.
And
a dance.
Oh no, because it would make more sense if it was like, instead of being like bye from me, it'd be like Fantastic Four. She's Hannah Cham and I'm Matthew Hoare.
Oh my god, okay, I regret the song